Hi there, I'm Danny Thompson. Welcome to my lair, a place full of twisted dreams and sweet nightmares. And don't let the bedbugs bite.
Thanks, Danny. Okay, and welcome to Sweet Nightmares, and this is something that we're going to call A View from the Bar. So I'm Troy.
And I'm John.
That's John.
On the wine.
Necking some wine. I'm on the Old Peculiar today.
Yeah, well, you can get tablets for that.
yeah. I've always been a bit peculiar anyway. Old Peculiar, so one of the old, more traditional English ales rather than the usual poncy hipster craft beer that I'm into. What we're going to do with this is we're going to try these, see how they go, and we're going to we've got a topic that we're going to talk around. It's just going to be two blokes kind of sitting in a bar and just having a bit of banter, talking about a topic, and we're just going to see where it goes, and hopefully we'll have fun, and hopefully you, the viewer, will have fun as well.
Yeah, cool. Sounds good. So what subject do you wish to talk about tonight?
So because of everything that's going on in the world at the moment, and you know it's a hot topic, we're going to talk about pathogens.
Happiness.
Yeah, happiness.
Talk about happiness. That's right. Carry on.
Yeah, we're going to talk about happiness, rainbows, and unicorns.
Yeah,
and everything positive.
2019.
Yeah,
when everything was good.
Yeah, well, 2008. That was a pretty good year.
Okay. 2007 then.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, because of basically, the year 2020 has been an absolute shitstorm. So we thought we'd pick a really happy topic, and we're going to talk about pathogens in movies. So obviously, Sweet Nightmares is a kind of, horror is our main thing. So we've picked out a few films that kind of relevant to the current situation that we're all living through at the moment. So John, what do you think? What are your sort of thoughts on the films that we've picked out here?
Well, I guess one thing you could think about is kind of the phrase, what could we learn from these movies? If anything. Obviously, some of them deal with things which I guess is going to probably happen next year, like zombie apocalypse and whatever. But now we're dealing with a nice kind of normal planetary pandemic. So obviously we've seen that in films such as Outbreak, Contagion. We're also going to chat about Andromeda Strain, which, if I remember right, is more alien-based.
Yeah, it's based on a Michael Crichton book. It's a alien virus or bacteria that's infected like a whole town or a whole village or something.
Yeah, and then obviously we could touch on other, like more supernatural, paranormal, or whatever viruses.
Yeah.
Your Resident Evils, your 28 Days Later, to an extent. Although you could argue that, if I remember right, that's the Rage virus, and then that's not technically that supernatural. Even though it's kind of zombies, it's not zombies. So
yeah,
it kind of plays with those. I'm sure George Romero would definitely have something to say about that. So calling them zombies.
Yeah. Okay. So shall we start off with Contagion then? Because I think Contagion was that's a film that it could almost be a documentary about the world that we're living in right now. And I know when all lockdown kicked off and what have you, Contagion suddenly became like the top trending film on Netflix that month, because as everybody was watching it. And
it makes you wonder why people watching it. I mean, the reasons, there's probably various reasons, but there must be a certain amount of people who are genuinely interested. A certain amount of people who might be watching it to see, oh, hopefully it's going to get to a happy ending, and all that. And yeah, whether some people almost saw it as some form of educational or documentary type thing. So
yeah, and just an element of relatability. It's like, oh, let's watch this film about this horrible situation that we're all in at the moment. But it was, I thought what was interesting about watching Contagion is, isn't it like 10 years old or something? Is it 2010?
I think so. Don't quote me on
More
that.
recent than that.
They can flash up on the screen.
Yeah.
So.
And
We've done the research.
Yeah, because we're really professional like that, and we always do our research.
Like every drunk person in a bar, we know 100% about what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I've got my dad on speed dial, so if we get stuck, then we just ring Dad. I mean, that's what it used to be like in the 90s, anyway.
Oh God,
yeah. So what I thought interesting about Contagion was that it pretty much predicted almost everything that happened. Although the virus is different, it's not a COVID virus. It's like SARS or something, isn't it? I think. But what really got me was the way it pretty much predicted everything that's happened, like right down to like the Jude Law character who's spreading all the fake news and talking about don't trust the vaccine and take this other unproven remedy that the big pharma are suppressing and don't want you to know about, which is obviously utter bollocks. But there's plenty of tinfoil hat wearing lunatics like that on
and
the
Jude
internet.
Law, he's playing the president, yes. Oh no, sorry.
Well, he could have been, yeah.
Sorry, I'm getting reality and cinema mixed up again.
Yeah, but so there was obviously some parallels there, which was very interesting, I thought. And the other thing that I thought was interesting about it was the way they rolled out the vaccine in the film, because it's a real worst case scenario. They've basically based the story of the film on the model that had been rolled out by the WHO and the CDC and all these health and science organisations over the years, where they've kind of run these simulations and run the data and worked out kind of what worst case scenario is if a virus like that or like COVID-19 hit, and that's kind of what the film depicts. So it's that worst case scenario, and they've got, I think in the film, is like the global death toll is like 26 million or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's 25, 26 or something.
Yeah, it's just really depressing.
Yeah.
And then when they eventually get the vaccine, they haven't got enough to go around, so they do like a birthday lottery. And they pull a birthday out of the hat, and then those people get the vaccine. Yeah. So it's quite a slow rollout.
That's quite an interesting one, because I think we're going to see in a worst case, in a pessimistic point of view, we're going to see not necessarily something like a birthday lottery, but a financial lottery, in which, the highest bidder, unless something really, unless it goes very different to what normally happens, it seems, we're going to sadly see that. It won't be quite like a Salk and the it's not polio, is it? It's the vaccine he developed, where he basically made it public for the public and licensed it essentially for the public. So I think you're right. There is parallels and it's quite close. It's also interesting probably to see some of maybe the differences, especially because it is cinema. And there will be some creative license taken with things. I can't quite remember the exact, but it probably is over a shorter time. Yeah, a vast amount of people die, but I think it's over a shorter time as well. So the vaccine is developed quite quickly. Yeah, I'm sure I'm seeing it's like 4 months or something like that, which is crazy, really. Yeah. I think. With today's science,
I mean, we know from our current experience that 4 months is extremely unrealistic, because we're 8 months into this now, and at least, and there's still no sign of a vaccine. Like lots of countries and lots of universities and labs have said we found a vaccine, but there's still no sign of that vaccine. They will find it eventually, but then it could take. Usually, it takes 18 months to 2 years as a minimum to do all the testing and everything on
Well, I guess
the.
it's the testing is the thing, isn't it? You
Yeah,
know, I wouldn't say it's probably easy to find the vaccine. I wouldn't actually know really, but I can imagine finding the vaccine or finding a vaccine is potentially, especially if after an amount of time you know you can, and if everyone's sharing information and stuff like that, you could potentially do it. It's about making something that doesn't have adverse effects on people and actually is worse. And there must be, you know, hundreds and thousands of different things that, you know, it has to pass each group of people. There's no point developing a vaccine which is fantastic but kills everybody who's got cancer or kills everybody who's got red hair or something. You know what I mean? It's like it's kind of that sort of thing.
Yeah. And I think when we do get the vaccine, like Chris Whitty, is it? It's the
It's the
government's top science officer in the UK. He was saying the other day that it's highly unlikely that we'll see a vaccine before the end of winter next year.
Yeah.
So we're talking sort of February time probably before there's any sign of a vaccine. And then even if they've got the vaccine by then, it's got to be. They've got to run the trials to make sure that it's safe and effective and know what the safe and effective dosages are. And then once they've done that and they roll it out, it'll be the most vulnerable people first that get it.
Yeah.
And when you look at the way that the virus works and like the lower mortality rates among healthier younger people, it kind of makes sense. Like protect the old and the vulnerable, and then let everyone else get it and pass it amongst ourselves. And eventually it will weaken, but that will take 2 or 3, 5 years.
That's herd immunity, isn't it?
Yeah, but you don't get herd immunity without the vaccine.
Yeah, very true.
There's been, sorry, but we're going off on a very serious tangent now, but there's been a couple of research papers that I've seen. One was out of, I think it was probably like one of the Chinese studies out of Wuhan, I would imagine, and they're finding like the antibodies don't last. So you get it, you build up the antibodies, but they only last a very short period of time, and then you're vulnerable to it again. So the current evidence, as it stands, based on what we currently know, implies that you can't get herd immunity through through natural means without a vaccine being available, and to try to do so is both unethical and unrealistic.
I guess that's kind of going back to the point, like saying with the film, is the film is, I don't know, 2 hours long or whatever, and is basically condensing what we're going to probably experience over the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years, whatever, into those 2 hours. So it's quite it's good to, it's obviously good to watch. It's also, I think, quite important to remember that this is and when we start talking about outbreak as well, it is cinema. There's a serious point to it, and certainly the difference between something like, excuse my computer there, Contagion and Outbreak, the seriousness maybe of what you could say the director and their thought with regarding to the subject is Steven Soderbergh is, that he's a much more focused and serious filmmaker.
I tell you what, just like personally, what on Contagion, I personally thought the best thing in that film was watching Gwyneth Paltrow die. And I couldn't help but chuckle to myself, and I was like, see, that's what you get for listening to your own bullshit nutrition advice.
So there goes our Goop sponsorship.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we might even have to blank that out to stop the lawyers coming after us. Who knows? You know, I'm sure it's yeah. I mean, one quick thing about, and maybe then we talk about Outbreak, because there's some similarities actually. That is the quality of the cast. You know, the cast is it's an ensemble piece, which is good actually. One thing you might say about Outbreak is that Dustin Hoffman, as your lead action man, almost, although obviously he's a scientist and all this kind of stuff. I think, is he a scientist? He is, isn't he? Yeah.
He's a military doctor.
Yeah, military doctor, isn't he?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's
virologist, whatever.
That's kind of you know, another thing as well. It's sort of it's a bit more grounded. Outbreak. What's your thought?
So I watched it the other night, and it's probably the first time I've seen it since it came out, I think. And I remember the first time I watched it, I think I had quite low expectations, and I really enjoyed it first time, and I was really pleasantly surprised, and I found it really quite tense and quite exciting. And like you say about Dustin Hoffman, for me that was always the key thing, because it's basically, it's not a horror film, it's not a sci-fi film, it's basically just an action movie, except, you know, the virus is the bad guys, and the US military doctors are the good guys, they're the heroes, and Dustin Hoffman is kind of he's the detective and the hero. But because it's Dustin Hoffman, in the back of your mind, you're going, well, Dustin Hoffman can't save the fucking world. He's not Arnold Schwarzenegger. So there's always that little element of doubt that you've got this guy who's basically just a doctor with a big nose, and how can he save the world? So that worked quite well. And then he's got Cuba Gooding Jr. as his sidekick in what I think was probably his first major Hollywood role.
Yeah, it was early, wasn't it? I'm guessing it was before Show Me the Money and stuff.
Jerry Maguire.
Yeah,
I think it was. So I think that was his first major studio, major role in a major studio film after Boys in the Hood. I could be wrong, but so definitely Boys in the Hood was the first time I think most of us had seen. It might have been his first film. I can't remember. Was it introducing Cuba Gooding Jr. and Boys in the Hood?
Possibly. I think so. I think it was definitely his first one where it kind of, you know, showcased him on a sort of national level or whatever.
Yeah. So, and then this, you know, is quite a departure from that role. He plays a military pilot, which
is handy.
Yeah, which is handy because then you can have the Hollywood trope of a giant helicopter chase in the middle of the film for no reason whatsoever, just so that we can have some action shots and some explosions.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the difference, isn't it? That's kind of what that maybe the difference between Contagion and Outbreak. The Hollywood essence of it. I mean, it still does. I guess. You know, and maybe some people, you know, some people in the know will tell different. You know, doctors and that would be actually no, it's all complete nonsense. But it does seem, from what I read, and that is quite grounded and references. I guess it is Ebola. I think.
So in Outbreak, it's the Matuba virus, which is.
But I think it's referencing Ebola, really.
It's not it's a fictional virus that they made up from a village called Matuba. I think I've pronounced that correctly.
Yeah, because Ebola is named after the river. So. Yeah.
And it's basically it's basically like Ebola times 10.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the symptoms are very similar. It's like a hemorrhagic, hemorrhage and kind of melt from the inside out. And it's got 100% fatality rate. So if you get it, you're dead.
Yeah.
And then
I'm surprised they didn't go for 110%. You know, because obviously that's more Hollywood. So.
Yeah. And then you got the interesting thing. So I mean, and you mentioned the ensemble cast in Contagion, Outbreak, very much, because you've got Dustin Hoffman, Cuba Gooding Jr. We've already mentioned, but you've also got Morgan Freeman. You've got Kevin Spacey before he went all rapey. Rene Russo, probably at the height of the popularity, I would say. Donald Sutherland. And obviously Donald Sutherland's the bad guy because it's Donald Sutherland and he's always the bad guy. So he's spoilers if you've not seen it. He's kind of like the big bad military general, and it turns out that he's trying to manipulate this thing as a biological weapon. And so Dustin Hoffman wants to stop him from doing that. So then although the virus is the bad guy, it turns out the virus is kind of the stormtroopers and Donald Sutherland is Darth Vader.
Yeah, that's quite. Well, I was going to say that trope of you having a central evil baddie and goodies, and then having that middle third thing, which is essentially the baddie, but it's the other baddie. It's normally the government. I mean, Aliens is obviously with Wayland, and that is obviously a big example of that kind of thing. I'd actually say, I don't know, the creature is Darth Vader, and the government is the Trade Federation, maybe, or something like that. Do you know what I mean? They're very different, they're very separate, and they're both evil in their own way. I mean, the thing you can always say about viruses, and I think Dustin Hoffman kind of alludes to it, is that you almost got to sort of admire it in a way. I mean, essentially, the virus is just doing what it's born to do, and like everyone always says that humanity is a virus, etc., eating this planet kind of thing. We're just doing what we're doing. Now, obviously, we can change that, and I don't know if a virus could change that. I don't think it has the capability. Obviously, I'm not saying that it would do that kind of thing, but that's kind of the two different baddies. Sometimes is you have your baddie, the alien is just doing its thing, the virus is just doing its thing that it's built for, and then there's your government agency normally, and they're making a decision. They actually can help and do stuff and whatever. Kind of like what you could make the movie of, in 10 years' time of COVID-19, and you're definitely going to have your big baddie, which would be COVID-19, and then you're going to have your other government baddie as such, depending on your slant on that, and also depends on what happens with it. So it's quite a trope you see, I think, a lot in especially these kind of films to have. Otherwise, it gets a bit boring, I guess, if you're just fighting the virus.
Yeah,
good to have the tension of the political thing, and then you get your helicopter chases. I mean, the virus doesn't have helicopters, I guess. So
yeah. And you're talking about like the Hollywood tropes there. I've just suddenly remembered, like, there's the dynamic between the two characters, Rene Russo and Dustin Hoffman. They're married, but they're separated, or they're going through a separation, and it's not amicable. And then the virus brings them back together, and they end up working together again, and then they start falling back in love with each other. And then Kevin Spacey's character gets it, and he's dying, and he gives the virus to Rene Russo, and then it's a race against time for Dustin Hoffman and Cuba Gooding Jr. to find the monkey, which is the host, in time to save Rene Russo and reconcile their marriage, which of course they do because it's Hollywood.
Yeah, exactly. That's it, isn't it?
And it's kind of very similar to, I thought, the kind of the main plot line in Abyss.
Yeah.
You got Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio and is it Ed Harris?
Yeah, Ed Harris, isn't it?
Is that Ed Harris? Yeah, and they're separated, and then the aliens reveal themselves at the end, and they get back together.
Yeah. With it, that's kind of again, it's a Hollywood trope, isn't it?
Mm.
It's character arcs. If they start off not together, then you kind of want to see them together, I guess, at the end.
Mm.
And when I say when you or we or whatever, it's kind of the general public. 80% of the general public, in principle, probably does just want to see a happy ending and walk out. Not, you know. I personally am not a big fan of happy endings. I quite like downbeat endings, and I find those quite happy in a weird way. But yeah, so I agree. It's definitely this kind of stuff is definitely it's a little bit by the numbers in a way. You could argue. You could almost say that Outbreak it doesn't have to be a film about an outbreak. You know, you probably see that game plan in numerous films. You know,
it is the Hollywood blockbuster by numbers.
Yeah, Independence Day.
Yeah,
yeah. There's another one. Yeah, they're two divorces, and
or
maybe
Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of kind of Hollywood cliches in it. I mean, it's still a good. If you've not seen it, it's a decent film. It's not a brilliant film. It's a decent film. It's quite good fun. It's got a great cast.
Yeah.
And
well, it's a Hollywood film. It's like you could watch it and not really have to think about it. And you could have a nice, pleasant evening on a Sunday night and just sit and watch a bit of nonsense, even though the underlying thing is, and it's not necessarily nonsense. Actually, it's reasonably well done and obviously quite accurate in some respects to possibly, kind of what's happened. So, what about something like the Andromeda Strain then?
So we've done like the two kind of so Contagion. They're both hypothetical. Contagion and Outbreak. They're both hypothetical viruses, but they're based on reality. And then we've got the Andromeda Strain, which is a classic early 70s film. I think it's Michael Crichton wrote it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a Michael Crichton one, isn't it?
Yeah, he's got a cameo in it as well, I think. Aesthetic
1971.
Really early 70s. I remember seeing it on TV, probably in the late 80s or early 90s sometime. I think it was on like Videodrome or something like that. 'Cause I remember getting the introduction either from Mark Commode or
Alex Cox.
Alex Cox, yeah. And so that was my first introduction to it many years ago. And I remember watching it as a kid, and the scene where the helicopter flies out to the town and everyone's dead. That really got to me. Like the image, the way it's shot, and everything about that. Just it seems like I think there's just of the comparing this with the previous two films where they're based a bit more on reality. This one has got some elements of sci-fi to it. It's got some elements of horror to it as well. It's much more of a bleak thriller, and the imagery of that scene kind of really affected me when I first saw it as a kid. And then I think the investigators that go down, even though they're wearing suits, they get infected and they die almost as soon as they land, I think. And and then all the scenes in the lab, aesthetically very similar to something like Kubrick's 2001.
Yeah,
the way it's shot.
Yeah, it's got that kind of stark, clinical look, if I remember to it.
Yeah, and just the way they're lit and the colour palette that they've chosen for some of those scenes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's similar to the other two in the way that the story goes. you know, you still get your Hollywood tropes, and they kind of win the day at the end. I don't think there's a, I can't remember. I don't think there's a dark twist at the end of that one, is there? Like,
I
you don't.
don't think so.
There isn't a. You know, they've won the day, and then there's a shot of the virus sitting in the corner going.
Well, it's the 1970s, isn't it? It's not going to be pretty.
Like the Max Cady kind of bad guy comeback.
Yeah. I mean, he's. I suppose the interesting thing about a lot of the virus films is they kind of follow the same storytelling paths in a way. Normally, obviously with some differences, but there is that element. So if you could talk about, like, if we're talking about the other ones we sort of mentioned, which like Resident Evil and 28 Days Later and stuff like that. And I watched some stuff on Doomsday, which I'm going to rewatch. Neil Marshall's one. It's kind of you have your, a lot of these films tend to start off with the virus. It's either the aftermath of the virus or the virus happening. So the ones that we talked about, you know, Contagion and Outbreak, are kind of the virus happening. Ones like Resident Evil and 28 Days Later are kind of more the virus has happened.
Yeah.
Anything like with zombie films, maybe World War Z off the top of my head, and there's probably more, but you know, most of them occur after the initial sort of apocalypse.
Yeah, it kind of throws you into
pandemic
the middle of the situation, doesn't it? Yeah. Let's say Andromeda Strain. It's a virus from outer space. It's kind of similar to the George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, because wasn't that an out of the zombies in that were infected by, wasn't it a satellite or something that had fallen?
Yeah, it was a satellite, wasn't it? Yeah, or it wasn't a meteorite. I'm pretty sure it was a satellite that came down, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's the whole sort of fear of technology thing, wasn't it? So yeah, interesting. Andromeda Strain's an alien pathogen. 28 Days Later, wasn't that?
That was developed,
alien?
wasn't it?
It was developed.
Yeah, wasn't that developed in a lab? I'm pretty certain that all starts off in a lab.
Because Cillian Murphy's character is in hospital and he's unaffected, isn't he? He's like one of the few that hasn't been infected for some reason. Because you got the great shot of him walking through the empty streets of London, like walking across London Bridge in his pajamas, and it's just like there's no one around.
That's back in the day when there really wasn't visual effects as well. So they shut that down and had, like, I don't know, 10 minutes to shoot as much as they could before they had to reopen, type thing. Whereas nowadays you would just shoot and people are wandering around, and then you digitally remove them. So
or you just do it green screen.
Or just a green screen type thing. Yeah. So
they're very similar to Day of the Triffids. It's a bit of a parallel there, because that's the meteorite storm, isn't it? But the guy's in hospital with the eye infection or whatever, so he doesn't see the meteorites or the meteor shower because he's got the dressing over his eyes.
Yeah, I mean that probably, you know, I guess that kind of sci-fi and that kind of idea, definitely around like the 50s, 60s, 70s of you know, something falling to earth. What's the Donald Sutherland one?
Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. That was a great example. There's a low budget film called The Thing, which has an element of that, which I know I must watch one day. But,
we've definitely not seen that one. And we're definitely never going to talk about that again.
That reminds me, I need to watch it for the millionth time tonight.
Yeah.
So. But I mean, that in some ways, perhaps that's one of the things, like with the Andromeda Strain and kind of thing, is this, it's a very 70s movie. It feels that era in some ways.
Mm.
You possibly wouldn't have had something like Contagion or Outbreak, and I could be very wrong, but I could imagine you wouldn't really have had those type of movies happen at that time, because
No, I
cinema
think,
was
yeah,
possibly a combination of escapism and getting away from realism. So you might have not had something quite as realistic on the nose. Now, I could be very wrong, and there probably is something.
yeah. So I think what they were in that era, rather than it being about a virus or pathogen, the sort of films that were in the vein of Contagion were usually about nuclear paranoia,
Yeah,
the nuclear meltdown and things like that, or
and
things about
communists.
the computers taking over.
Yeah.
There's a couple of films. I can't remember off the top of my head now, but there's a couple of films that from that era I remember seeing that follow those sort of narratives.
Yeah.
But so looking at the list, we and you mentioned it a little while ago, Resident Evil. So obviously that's based on a video game. What do you think of the films?
Um,
Have you seen all of them?
I've got no idea if I've really seen all of them, because isn't there like loads of them?
Many of them, yeah.
It's like saying, have you seen all the Underworld films or whatever? It's
Yeah,
kind of,
yeah.
I've got no idea really.
All the
I've seen
13
them.
ones.
I've probably seen the majority of them. I thought the first one did what it wanted to do. I mean, I quite enjoyed Resident Evil when I was a kid, as far as I remember, and I've not played it since, really, since being a kid. Well, not a kid, but a young adult. I mean, the films in terms of again dealing with the virus side, because it's quite a big aspect of it, and it's also it's Umbrella, isn't it? Umbrella Corporation.
Yeah, so it's because right at the start of COVID-19, there was the kind of slightly tongue-in-cheek conspiracy theory, because people were saying that the virus had been created in this laboratory in Wuhan, and there was this story going around the internet that COVID-19 was basically the plot to Resident Evil, because the laboratory's logo was very, very similar to the Umbrella logo from the game. And Resident Evil set in Raccoon City, and I mean it's grammatically completely wrong, but they were saying, oh, and coronavirus, corona is an anagram of raccoon, which of course it isn't unless you misspell raccoon. But
yeah, which is, if you're believing most of that, is probably quite easy to do.
Yeah, probably, guess. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's probably like less. I'm guessing within Resident Evil, because I think it's a bit more. It's less about that side of things. It's less about the human side of things in some respects. It's more about monsters and fighting and stuff. Like Contagion has that element of dealing with the other danger, the other evil within this is the humans themselves, and you can kind of see that when you turn on the news, that the way people are reacting and the way people are dealing with this, or conspiracy theories and all this kind of stuff is part of the danger. Now, obviously, maybe you could say that there could be some truth to it all, but I don't know. It's just like you can't not take a vaccine because so-and-so told you on YouTube that it's going to make you explode or...
Bill Hicks has invented the vaccine to inject us all with a tracking microchip, but haven't Apple and Samsung already invented that microchip?
Bill Hicks.
We all willingly just carry around that tracking device with us everywhere we go. So
Yeah.
why does Bill Hicks? I'm sure
Yeah.
Bill Hicks would have plenty to say.
I was going to
about
say, yeah, that's just like, yeah. But
why would Bill Gates go through the rigmarole of faking a virus just to put a chip in us when he could just create a really good mobile phone
I mean,
or a smartwatch?
the virus is an incredibly dangerous thing. I think things like QAnon, which is the big one, I don't know, which I assume you're aware of, and seems to be, you know, all that kind of thing, all that side of it is almost more dangerous than the virus. I personally, I think the virus it's going to be with us for a long time in some respect, like all the viruses are. You know, they never really go away. They just get controlled. And yeah, whereas all the others, like you say, the phone, the thing that you're holding in your hand, the phone, and all this kind of stuff, you know, we're all being tracked. Anyway, but it doesn't always have to be quite so sinister. It's normally about making lots of money out of us. So
I had a friend who was in the army and he was doing some signals intelligence. This was a long time ago, and he said to me that they've got the technology that if they wanted to, this was during the Gulf War, and he said something like, I don't know how true this is, you know, so I don't want to get accused of fake news or anything like that.
You're starting something now. This is
this is going to be all over the internet now, isn't it?
Will be retweeted by Trump later.
But like apparently, like he was saying that they could kill Saddam Hussein by, you know, they could hack into his mobile phone, switch it on while he sleeps, and then send a laser guided missile directly to his GPS signal on his phone. Well, how true that is, I don't know, but there might be a slight exaggeration. But...
Yeah, well, in principle, you know, I guess the science to that could possibly stand up. Yeah, if you've got a phone that's GPS tracking, in principle, if somebody knows what you are, they know where you are, and if they want to send a big missile to blow you up, then in principle, yeah, I guess it could be. There's lots of things online that know where I live, know the number I live at. I mean, don't forget that's been around forever as well, hasn't it? So, everybody knew my address in the town I used to live in, you know, kind of thing. And so, if somebody really wanted to do something, then hey, yeah. So it's kind of not a new concept, but at the same time, yeah, it could be possible. But then that's all kind of. The problem is with that kind of stuff is just like it's kind of conspiracy, and a conspiracy is not necessarily a bad thing, but the term has the connotations of it now. So
I think having a level of skepticism is a good thing, a healthy level of skepticism. Ask questions about everything, question everything, but pay attention to the evidence. Like, don't just be contrarian for the sake of contrarian and choose the opposite opinion to what you're being told by. You know, it's like if the vast majority of all the scientists and doctors in the world are saying the same thing, but this one bloke on YouTube is saying this other thing, why do people listen to him and not them? You know, why is that considered the conspiracy and not him?
Well, there's a great John Oliver sketch. I think it's John Oliver or Stephen Colbert, one of them. That very notion that so when you see your news report, you have one scientist who's one way, and you know, one point of view, and one scientist who's the other. But that one scientist who say the other, like, and obviously in terms of climate change, there's one who is, you know, believes that, you know, humanity is a massive cause of it, and then there's one who doesn't, who normally is employed by the people, petrol companies, and God knows what else. But that person represents 0.1%, whereas the other person represents 99% of the argument. So it's kind of that's the unfortunate thing about this kind of stuff is
There's a really interesting. So I'm going to bring up comic books now. So in the Judge Dredd story, Chaos Day or Day of Chaos, I think this is like from like 2012 or 2014 or something like that. But there's another case of the writer John Wagner basically predicting the future, and in that the Mega City 1, Dread City is like this virus, the chaos bug is spreading throughout the city, and there's loads of things in that have a lot of parallels of what we've experienced these days. It's like the Justice Department shut down all the city blocks and they lock everyone into their city blocks, and the citizens are protesting. They go, let us out, we don't want to be in lockdown. And then there's this big conspiracy, like somebody leaks some new fake news footage, and then the citizens turn and revolt against the judges because they think they're being lied to about, and that it's all a big conspiracy, and they're just dumping bodies in these death pits in the cursed earth. And there was even a bit in it where the virus was spread by a Russian agent who basically she infected herself with the virus, and then went to a nightclub and just danced with and snogged loads of people and spread the virus that way, and then travelled on the tube, spreading it around, coughing on people, and that's how the virus spread. And there was a case, I think it was in South Korea, or it was one of the East Asian countries, where they actually had that. They had after their initial lockdown, they had like a second wave after an infected person had gone to a bunch of nightclubs and infected loads of people.
Yeah.
So it's just another case of like we said right at the beginning of the fiction meeting reality, and how 2020 is the dystopian future that science fiction and horror has always kind of warned us about.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's going to be interesting to see how media of all forms and storytelling, etc., develops. And there's a out already, but how we kind of accommodate this, because this in principle is, well, it's touch wood, not the worst case scenario, but it's obviously it's a pandemic, which we've had before, but we've never really had in our lifetime to this extent. So so how that develops and how that's dealt with is going to be for one. Oh, my camera's just moved. That's a bit scary. For want of anything is going to be quite interesting to see. I think that's the thumbs up to say your time's almost up. So
yeah. Okay, so very quickly then. So we've talked about the hypothetical kind of real viruses. We talked about the space viruses and the laboratory made viruses. So what about REC and I guess it's the Fortean. Would you call it a Fortean virus?
Yeah, paranormal.
Yeah.
I mean, REC and you kind of got to take all of them, really. I suppose, because they do kind of develop through it, if I remember right, just the extent of what the virus is, and the virus in that is kind of demonic virus, which again is that does exist in some other programs. One that I would always think of is if anybody's ever watched the TV series Supernatural, there's a huge thing about the viral qualities of demons and stuff, or as a virus, as opposed to being just this kind of paranormal thing. But then, I mean, REC's great because
apart from the fact that it's awesome and it's probably the most terrifying film I've ever seen.
I remember watching it with you guys, and you all being
We watched
terrified.
Simon's, didn't we?
Yeah, yeah. But it's also so one thing that I suppose does differ a bit is it's a bit more world building. There's lots of ways they could take that, and they do take it various ways, and depends on what you think about the quality of the final films. If anything, I always equate them to the Alien films, because the first one's really, really, really good. The second one, you just know they were just like, this is going to be aliens, where it's all gung ho, and then the third one is a bit rubbish, and
the second one's awesome when they've got, because you got all the Marines or whatever they are going in, and they've all got their like their image intensifying goggles and what have you, and you get all the split screens, so you see all the different. It's just like the Alien game on Commodore 64.
Yeah. I mean, you can tell that that's what they were going for. They just knew they were just going to be doing that, and that's weirdly why I thought like 3 felt a little bit like Alien 3, and the less said about Rec 4, maybe the better.
I've not seen 3 and 4.
It's not very good.
I've heard they're not very good.
I mean, Rec 3 had some good bits to it, almost like you could say that Alien 3 does. And depends on your point of view about Alien 3. I mean, I actually quite like Alien 3, having rewatched it, and I really like the director's. There's a different version of it.
Wasn't there a different script, like the original script? Isn't that available somewhere on the internet? And apparently,
I've got the box set of it, and there's 2 different versions of the film, and the second version is completely different, and like literally there's some completely different stuff. There's a whole scene where one of the aliens comes out of a cow or a ball or something like that, and it's just like, that was never in the other film. What the hell's going on? It's like it is completely different. I mean, we should watch those and maybe have a chat about that. That could be quite
right.
fun.
No, I heard there was a leaked script that it's a completely different story, and like Hick and Newt survive, and Hick's the main sort of main character in it. Obviously Ripley as well, but Hicks, and it's more, I think, so I've not read it, so I don't know, I might be getting some of this wrong, but I think that it's like Hick and Ripley got, it develops their relationship a bit more, and Hick's got a much bigger role to play, becomes a much more significant character in that version, and that was the original script that got dumped for whatever reason when they changed. Because didn't it change director a couple of times?
Yeah, I think it's a mess, isn't it? Like in terms of thing, and Fincher didn't have a script.
Yeah,
making it up as they go along, type thing.
Right, so.
Which is why I don't think it's a dreadful film. I think there's some great aspects to it. Like the whole, because it was supposed to be monks or something. I think in like the original one, it was there were monks, and then obviously it became a prison thing. But yeah.
The only thing to that was like the only other character they really developed in that was Charles Dance's character, and then he dies about 30 minutes into the film, and then you're just left with a bunch of generic bald English guys. Oh look, there's another bald English guy being eaten by a dog thing, and you just don't care because you don't know who he is. Yeah.
I mean, so we've kind of gone off a tangent there, but I mean, that's my thought on Rec and stuff. So
I think we've pretty much covered
covered everything.
I mean, there's loads more. Yeah. So I mean, if you're watching this on YouTube and you can think of like a pathogen virus related film that you really liked, then let us know in the comments.
Yeah. It's Troy's round now anyway, so he has to go to the bar.
Really dry.
Now, did you want to finish?
So just finishing off because we plan to film this, and then few days ago, the new Batman trailer dropped, and so we just thought we wanted to talk about that very briefly, give our own personal opinions of it, because everyone on the internet has an opinion on the new Batman trailer at the moment, so we might as well jump on that bandwagon. So what were your thoughts from seeing the trailer, John?
Well, so aside from my thoughts about the trailer, the first thing I would say is, why are we having another Batman movie? But that would always be my thing. Having said that, seeing the trailer, I'm kind of in two minds about it. The trailer looks to me very good, and it looks like actually a really good film sort of thing. And I like the darker sensibility of stuff. Watching it, I was almost like, oh, I really wish this was actually not a Batman film, but this was something else. But then the other side of that would be, well, actually, maybe this is going to be very different, and this is actually going to tell a different story. And not being a sort of reader of Batman and not knowing, I know everything really from the films. It's much more interesting. So obviously the reference would be Joker. I mean, the Joker movie to me was much more, much more how I would envisage that kind of that world and that kind of filmmaking. So yeah, I quite liked it, and there's lots of stuff on YouTube about all the hidden stuff in there and all that kind of thing. So I think I would probably watch it and then watch a load of stuff on YouTube and be like, okay, this means this and that means that, and et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah, so what I saw in the trailer, I think there's a mention of the Riddler and maybe Penguin.
Yeah,
I believe Penguin is in the movie, from what I've heard. So, I mean, obviously Danny DeVito is probably not available for that, which is a shame, because he's probably the best Penguin after Burgess Meredith. Catwoman was in it. Very briefly, you see Catwoman, I think, in the trailer, which is Zoe Kravitz.
Okay.
Is it Zoe Kravitz?
Wasn't it? Yeah.
Kravitz's daughter?
Yeah, because wasn't there a big thing on the internet because she's not
white.
Yeah.
Even though it's Catwoman has been
played by Halle Berry and
Halle Berry, and in the TV series was played by Eartha Kitt.
Yeah.
Greatest Catwoman. So
yeah, I'm sure I remember seeing some backlash or something like that.
Yeah, and Zoe Kravitz, it is Zoe Kravitz. I've got the name right, haven't I? I'm not saying the wrong name.
I'm not too sure. We can flash it up there.
Yeah.
There.
But she's, I mean, I've seen her in stuff. She's a good actress and she's quite hot, so who cares?
And on that sexist note.
But yeah, so yeah, I don't mind. Doesn't bother me. But what did you think of Robert Pattinson as Batman?
I mean,
it's Vengeance, as he calls himself. It's the same as who are you? And you think he's going to say I'm Batman, and he doesn't. He says I'm Vengeance.
See, I always fell into the camp of I never really watched the Twilight movies, so I was aware of him, but I didn't really know much about him. And he was obviously almost, I suppose, possibly like kind of Brad Pitt and all these ones who these actors who become Leonardo DiCaprio. Although he's slightly different, but who are instantly like some heartthrob, and then it becomes apparent they can act. Yeah, Johnny Depp. Well, I was saying, the only reason I ummed a lot about Johnny Depp and Leonardo DiCaprio is because their earliest films, and Leonardo DiCaprio was amazing in What's Eating Gilbert Grape. So he actually proved he was an actor right at the start, weirdly, and then became a heartthrob. Sort of Titanic and stuff like that. Yeah. But so there's obviously that air of things. The thing with Robert Pattinson is that having seen films like Lighthouse, I mean, he's an amazing actor, and he, I think he'll potentially be really good, depending on what's involved. It's a very different. It's a very different kind of film to some of the other Batman movies, so like that. And even and I could be wrong on this, but even the last ones with what's his name, Christian Bale, and the whole deep voice thing, it almost becomes a bit of a caricature of, kind of stuff. It
Well,
feels like
they took that to the nth degree with Batfleck, because the Ben Affleck Batman had like some kind of voice modulator, so it was amplified and distorted.
Well, if I'm right, listening to the trailer, they've kind of come back from that, and it's just a bit more like not silly,
a little bit more natural. Yeah.
He doesn't go. It just went a bit too far. So, yeah, I'm hoping it kind of does what the Joker did, which the Joker is almost a separate film. It's great to know it actually works better for you if you know the lore that it's picking up on and progressing with.
Yeah, I don't know though, because I think, to me, having watched, like when I watched Joker at the cinema, I sat there and I was like, this could quite easily be nothing to do with Batman. Like if he was called the Clown instead of Joker, and if it was New York instead of Gotham, and if it was Donald Trump instead of Thomas Wayne, like there'd be nothing else to identify it as a sort of a Batman, movie.
Well, I guess
it's almost like at the end when you see the murder of Thomas Wayne, and you see like the young Bruce Wayne at the end. It's almost as if they just kind of threw that in to say, "Oh yeah, and by the way, this is a Batman movie." Yeah,
I guess what I meant is there's two parallel universes in which and normally when you watch a film, there's multiple parallel versions that you watch. So you watch a film, especially say something which has a twist, you watch it the first time you watch it is a different experience to watch it the second time you watch it, because once you know what happens at the end, it then becomes a different thing. And I guess that's what I meant about the Joker. I was saying about the Joker was that it's there's definitely two parallel viewings. There's knowing what it's about and knowing the lore, and I think it works well with that, and I think it is potentially a better experience because you're filling in a lot of blanks. Because, like you say, it alludes to things, but essentially, knowing the lore, you're probably filling in a lot of stuff, and seeing where that's going to go. And then, obviously, if you don't have any clue about Batman and the lore, it still, in principle, works as a taxi driver, kind of thing. Taxi driver didn't have a law; it built the whole thing up itself.
King of comedy,
that kind of stuff. So that to me is I'm interested to see it. Interested to see, kind of what they do with it.
Yeah, I think as far as trailers go, it's perfect, because I had no interest in the film whatsoever, and I saw the trailer, and as soon as I heard Nirvana, I was like, okay, I'm interested now.
Right. Yeah, I'd say brilliant. The music choice was perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the look of it looks amazing. It's very easy to make a shit film look amazing in a 90-second trailer. So we don't know if it's actually going to be any good or not, but Robert Pattinson, I think, looks really good. I'm really intrigued to see where he takes the character. And like yourself, I'd never seen the Twilight movies, so I've never understood why everyone hates Robert Pattinson. I've only ever seen the films that he's done, like the less mainstream films that he's done, where he's just a really good actor who plays characters, I assume, nothing like the character that he played in Twilight. He's spent his entire career trying to undo Twilight, and it still haunts him. So if you've only ever seen Robert Pattinson in Twilight, and you've not seen what's the Atlas film, the ensemble piece that everyone's in, Sky Atlas.
Cloud Atlas.
Cloud Atlas.
Yeah,
he's in that, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Sure, it's that.
Well, if everyone's in it, he's got to be in it.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure
in principle, we're in it.
What was that other one that we saw where he played? Maybe it's that. I don't know. There's something else I saw him in where he's like an agent or something, and it's a little bit cyberpunk.
This is where research comes into it.
Yeah. We're really good at that, as you can tell.
We'll do a
but
little
yeah,
list now of films he's been in.
yeah. And then, of course, you mentioned the Lighthouse, which is amazing. He's brilliant in that. So yeah, he's a good actor. So when he was originally cast as Batman, and everyone kicked off and said, "Oh, this is going to be shit. Why have you got him? He's crap. He's too small. He's too weedy. He's a shit actor. He twinkles. Blah blah blah." I'm like, he's an actor. He's a really talented actor. I'm sure he can act and play Bruce Wayne and Batman really well. And it's exactly the same thing that happened with Dredd 2012 when they cast Carl Urban as Dredd. All the Dredd fan base were up in arms because it wasn't the actor that they wanted to play Dredd. And then as soon as they saw the film, now everyone's like Carl Urban is the only person allowed to play Dredd because he got it so right. Yeah. Like, if anyone else plays Dredd, it'll be a travesty. And I think the same thing is going to happen here with Pattinson and Batman, if the film's any good.
So, Robert Pattinson as Judge Dredd. What are your thoughts? And we might need to cut it there because the swearing might happen.
Can you see my temple?
That's a question for another time. So that's for the next one.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's a good place to wrap it up, really.
Cool.
Plays with his hat. So yeah, I mean,
I like your mega hat.
yeah. It's actually a Helly Hansen, but
yeah. Whatever.
Or I'm a blood from LA. No, I'm not. So we're gonna wrap it up there. We're gonna stop talking bollocks. If you've got any opinions about anything we talked about, put it in the comments. Let us know your thoughts on any of this stuff, and keep your eyes peeled for more of these waffling clips. I don't know, these views from the bar. From the bar. So we're Sweet Nightmares. Stay safe.